Good evening. Hi, it is so good to be here with everyone this evening on week 5. I'm Dr. Carol Brown, and tonight we're going to be looking at comprehension. It was a lot of fun to hear some of those that are in the in-person class talking about, even in the middle of the night, thinking about circles and boxes and X's and doing the games with their children and hearing that excitement. So that's been a lot of fun. I appreciate the emails that y'all are sending and the little notes I'm getting. So just want to encourage you to keep doing that. Don't hesitate to do that. Last week, you heard me say that if you want to get further training in this professionally, or if you're a parent who your child is on kind of a long-term track because of some different challenges that they have, then our conference is coming up April 15th through 17th for level 1, and level 2 is the 17th through 19th. And we do have folks that are coming to both. You also have the option of doing that on live stream. Live stream is going to be available for an entire month, so you would have those links. And then I know another popular option has been that people will get the recordings. So those are typically available a month after conference, and then you can watch those at your own pace. And like, for example, tomorrow afternoon, I'll meet with a gal who did that option. And I'm going to kind of check her. She's going to do her animals for me. She's going to go over to the 1 through 9 page, which I haven't shown y'all, and say her numbers and colors and animals and presidents and letters. So we see how well you can do all that to implement and for your certification, if you're going to do that professionally. So that's kind of a little bit of an option. Now tonight, my understanding is we do have audio for the Roses program. And while we can sit here and we can do some refresher from last week, I do want to show you a couple video clips of students that are doing this. And so on this one, we actually already set it up. And this is your number 1 through 5 page. And on this particular one, I had the student go ahead and put the symbol on the number, put the colored cube that goes with the number, and then put the other symbol on the number. But they're going to say the number, the color, and the animal. But I wanted to let you see what it looks like set up. And this is on the Roses program, and this is the program where we have over 500 little mini videos that you can watch to see how to do all of the steps. So here we go, and let's listen. What I see us doing, we're going to read these back just a minute. So just start at the top and let's say number, color, animal for me. We'll just do a few rows. You ready? Begin.
2 green turtles. 4 green snakes.
Good.
3 yellow snakes.
Jack, what symbol do you see?
Oh, bear.
Good.
2 black elephants.
Nice.
1 yellow snake. 5 blue turtles.
Nice. One more row.
3, green, um, turtle,
Yes.
4, red,
Mm-hmm.
4, red, and 2,
It is a 2, but if that was 4,
fish.
fish. There you go. Good thinking. Okay, nicely done.
Okay. So as you saw on that one, she was saying the number, the color, and the animal. And I hope you got to see that she didn't say it all perfectly, and we didn't start back over, but you heard me say check or to ask her what she saw. When she looked at the circle on our second row and said the wrong animal, I didn't say no or wrong. I said, what do you see? And so when she could do that, then she could correct herself, self-correct. And there at the very end, because you'll see students start out strong, and the longer they go, you may very well see it be more challenging to keep that sustained attention. So I wanted to give you an example because we had gone over this last 2 weeks on 3 and 4. So if you're just jumping on week 5, this will make no sense to you. And if you've been doing 3 and 4 and you've been working on this during the week, this is another way that you can set that up to work on it. And we'll look at some others as well. But let's stop for a minute tonight and really unpack what reading comprehension is. Okay? And this is one of those times I would love to get some feedback from you all. And I'm going to actually let the group tonight raise their hand, and then I'll repeat what they say because we don't have a mic for that. But just a couple thoughts in the room. Just raise your hand on what reading comprehension is. When you hear that term, what does that make you think? Yes? Okay, being able to make sense of what you've read. Exactly. That is probably the most common thing that we think of because that's very accurate. Okay? Some of the other things, what else might you think of with reading comprehension? Being able to retain what you read, not just immediately after, but 5 minutes later. Maybe the next day even, or the next week. Yes?
Understanding what the author intended you to know.
Okay, so not just being able to understand it, but also his intention, going a lot deeper. So you're making some inferences into the passage, being able to think critically about what you're reading at the same time, not just recalling the information. So taking that much further. Excellent. Anything else? Okay, those are great starting points. And some of the other things that we'll look at, there's also listening comprehension. And so being able, when a teacher is reading a story in class, and that I hope is even happening in the upper grades, because when I was a headmaster at a private school, our high school students loved read aloud. They absolutely loved it. I think it goes back to a real kind of fun, comforting time. But I want you to think for a minute, if you can imagine reading out loud, whether you're a teacher or a parent, a Sunday school teacher, and you have your book, and all the students, maybe they're in a circle around you, or they're at a desk, and they're all just on the edge of their seat, very attentive. And then you start reading, and then you look around and you're losing. People are going down in their seat. They're looking everywhere. They're wiggling. And it looks like what's happening? They're not paying attention, right? And so a lot of times with many of those students, they are not making a picture in their mind of what's being read to them. They're not creating images. And one thing that has happened in education is that students are being taught to read a passage and then go back and find the answer. Guess what? That's not reading comprehension. That's reading something and going back and finding the answer, okay? And we were talking about the need to remember what you're reading and to hold on to that. And we had a student who was in all AP classes, and she was going to take her ACT again, and when that was happening, her reading comprehension was her lowest score. And she needed to increase that to get at a scholarship level for college. And her parents had done all the traditional interventions for her for ACT prep. Then she came over and started to work with us. And when we were working, we read a passage and then took the passage away, and I started asking her questions. And it was a passage on Confucius, and he was walking along the narrow road, and it was describing him and what he was wearing and the sounds that were going on. And I started to ask what she pictured in this story, who she saw, where he was, and she said, well, I need to see the passage again. And it was just a short paragraph. And this is a top student in the school. And I said, you didn't make a picture in your mind when you read that? And she said, well, no, nobody's ever told me to do that. They just tell us to go find the answer after we read it. I'm like, oh, okay. So as we're working on that, that's when we were able to come in and teach her what you're going to learn tonight on how to do that, how to make those images. Because quite honestly, she's one of our success stories where we only needed to work with her 6 weeks. We work with students in person or online, and the next time she took the ACT, she went up 5 points. It put her in scholarship range. She went on, double majored in college, and now is in med school. And so, but that one glitch, so to speak, can you imagine being in pre-med in the med school and not being able to visualize what you're reading? Exactly. So I always love when I run into her mom and get to see what is going on in her life and where she is. And she always says, thank you for those 6 weeks that you spent to help her learn how to create those images. I would love to tell you that I'm the one that figured that out, but actually it was Aristotle over 2,400 years ago. And the 10 categories of being are what one of the many things that Aristotle brought to us. And we're going to look at those this evening with some different pictures. And they are going to be foundational to all learning. And Martin Cawthron has a book on material logic, and in that book he gives 3 chapters to Aristotle's 10 categories, and he calls them the foundation for intelligent thinking. And I'll tell people that are doing material logic that that is an excellent section in the book. You don't have to wait till 8th grade or 7th grade to learn it. You can start learning it even as a 3-year-old. Okay, and that's what you're going to find tonight when we look at these. So I'm going to pull up our pictures as we're going to take a look at these this evening. You have this picture in your handout, and we're going to blow it up. So I see you getting your handouts for me. And I've heard everybody is doing a fabulous job at home saying, I see you. And I hope everybody is doing that in your classrooms, and you're seeing a lot of positive things there. Okay, so as we look, this is my all-time favorite picture to use. And these are from what are called stair cards, okay? And stair cards are part of a board game. I've never actually played the game, which I know surprises no one, as what you've learned about me and taking different games. But I loved the cards. And in this particular card, when we were talking about the ability to create an image in your mind, some people will say make a movie in your head. That's one way that sometimes students can understand it, or adults. I think this is that perfect illustration in this picture. And so we'll have a student look at the picture, and then we'll ask the question, who or what do you see? Okay? So when you all look at the picture, who or what do you see in the picture? So go ahead and raise your hands. So what's something you see in the picture? Okay, you see a dream. And so we're really looking big picture on that, because you could actually even title this Dreaming, or The Dream, right? And how do we know he's dreaming? And that's something we would ask our student. So what's something that tells you that he's dreaming from the picture? Yes?
That he's asleep in the bed.
He's asleep in the bed, so you see his eyes closed. And some of you all may be aware, what else are they doing to show us?
Well, I'm sorry, I wasn't going to answer that question. I was going to ask, who's dreaming?
Right, and so you could ask that, who is dreaming in the picture? Could someone defend it both ways? Yes, they could. And that's one thing that we're always looking at, is not, when you're looking at these pictures, it's not that there's always a right answer. Yes, I'm fighting with the headset tonight, if you're noticing. Having glasses on that you need for readers and headsets are not conducive tonight. But yes, you could argue that both ways, couldn't you? That it's the boy in the bed, but you've got the picture above it, and then you've got the little dots, right, that they'll use in pictures to tell us that. And so this is a great example to show the students and ask them, or ask adults, can you close your eyes and make a picture in your mind? And this is an example of what that would look like, whether or not it was the boy in the basket or the boy in the bed, that they're able to close their eyes and picture. And so then we would ask them just who or what they saw. Okay, so we had the dream is going on, and we have already noted there are 2 boys, and then we would even ask the question, is this the same boy or a different boy? And we have had students be able to defend that both ways. Probably one of my most favorite new answers, which I thought was a great answer, a little 8-year-old boy that I work with said, "Oh, well, it's the same boy because you only dream about yourself." And so he was sure that was a dream of his younger self, that was the older self in the bed and the younger self that he was remembering. So someone else could argue it the other way, that it's somebody else. If it's someone else, we would say, well, how does he know him? What's their relationship? Okay, so is that a friend? Is that a brother? And then we would ask the quantity. And that is, well, we could quantity in terms of there are 2 boys, but then how old do you think the boys are? And I will tell you, this is a very interesting part of this puzzle. And I encourage you in this one to initially, receive their answers. Don't try to change their answers initially here, because I have had students say that the boy in bed was 14, okay, which is obviously a little old for the boy in bed, but I let them stay with that. I didn't say that was incorrect. I may prompt and say, well, now remind me, how old are you? And if they're saying, oh, well, I'm 10, does he look older than you? And just maybe ask some questions, but I'm trying to see, because a lot of students have a hard time looking at pictures and telling how old people are. Now, those of us who are in our 50s and beyond, and we may even remember when we were in our 20s, and maybe a 3-year-old would say that we were 50, right? Or, it's always interesting when children are guessing ages. But then when they look at the other picture and saying, well, how old do you think the other boy is? They typically are going to say that he's younger than the first one, okay? So you may have children that are aware that if the boy in bed is 8, that to be younger, he would need to be younger than 8. A lot of kids will say, oh, he looks like he's 2 or 3. And I'll say, well, what makes you think that? And they'll usually say, oh, because he can fit in the basket. He can fit in the basket. And so we're always first, your first category is always who or what. We're always, and what's brilliant with Aristotle's work, these 10 categories, is really they're universal in any subject. And they are foundational, not just for intelligent thinking, but intelligent decision making, because these are the categories that we use when we're making decisions. These are also going to be the basis for our language and for our writing, for our written and our oral language as well. Because we're always talking about something, right? A who or a what. And then the second category is the quantity, so the number, the age. You could even talk about the weight of something. So anything that's numerical. And then the next is the qualities that you see. And qualities in Aristotle's world was very broad in terms of colors you might see, or sounds you might hear, or textures, and size. So you're looking at those different qualities. And the color of the hair is something that the students will usually notice, that the little boy in bed has brown hair and the little boy in the basket has blonde hair. They'll usually say yellow hair. or they might say white. And then we'd even look at the other object, main object that gets the kids' attention, which would be what in this picture? The dogs. And this is a great one because is it the same dog or a different dog? And they will look very closely and getting them, and I will tell you, I'll always say, now I want you to stop and think. Because a lot of kids, a lot of adults will just like spew answers without really taking time to stop and think. And I had a little guy the other day, he was very detailed. He said, oh, when I look at the dog up top, his ears are a lot longer. The ears of the dog in bed are shorter, but the legs of the dog up top on the Basset Hound are very short. But when they looked at the legs coming out on the dog in bed, they noticed, he was like, his legs are a lot longer. Okay, so he was really going very specifically. A lot of students will notice the coloring around the eyes. When you look at that you'll see the darker brown on both sides and then only on one side here, so they'll look at that. So you're looking at the size of the dogs and the colors of the dogs, and are they the same dogs or different dogs? And then the next thing, the action, what's happening. And we had already noted, because a lot of times when you look at a picture, you might notice the action. So we already identified they're dreaming. And so to be dreaming, you're also doing what? You're thinking, you're sleeping. So I've had students say, oh, he's thinking, because could your eyes be closed and you're just thinking about something? You're not actually asleep yet? Yes, many of us do that when we get in bed, right? So he could be thinking, he could be dreaming, he could be sleeping. So those are the actions that you're going to see there. And then where is this happening? Where is it happening for the boy at the bottom? In bed. And he's actually in a physical bed. And where in the house do you think this is happening? In his bedroom. Yes. And so what about the boy up top? And so we have heard laundry room, I've heard kitchen, probably not the bedroom. They'll notice that the tile floor. And when you also look at this, what time of day? So when is this happening? What time of day do you think it's happening? In the evening, at nighttime. Someone could argue different things, and if they can give a good reason, that's absolutely fine, because a lot of little guys might take a nap in the middle of the day. But it looks like nighttime. What season of the year do you think it might be? Winter. And a lot of times we'll hear winter because of possibly two. You could see more things in there. What are two things that might give you that cue that that's winter time? He has his quilt on. And then what do you see on the boy up top? His onesies, PJs that are usually when you wear those when it's getting colder. But you're still, what we're developing is not perfect answers or, oh, this is exactly, we're 100% sure on this, but that when you're looking at anything, when we're considering things, we're looking at what it is, how many we have, the qualities, how old something is, what something is doing, what it can do. When you're looking at buying, whether it's a new dishwasher or a new car or a new computer, we think about all these 10 categories. Where am I going to put it? When can I get it? Oh, well, they're having a sale. Okay, oh, I missed the President's Day sale. When's the next one? You know, do I have to wait to the Memorial Day sale? And looking at specific times of years that we make decisions and the times of day. Then another area is how, and we alluded to this before, is what's the relationship? Okay, so when you're looking at anything or reading a story, how's one thing related to another? And whether that's himself or that's a sibling, you're talking about a parent. We also have relationships here in one picture is above the other that they drew, and that physical difference. And also as we look at the positions the boys are in. So one boy in bed is lying flat or horizontal, and then talking about the position of the little boy up in the basket. And that's kind of a fun one as you're describing that, and how his legs are bent and where we see his arms positioned behind his head. And why do you think his arms are behind his head? So it is there supporting his neck. Yes, and we can think of times we might do that. We're making our little makeshift pillow, right? So looking at that position they're in. And then, how are they feeling? How do the boys look like they're feeling in our picture? They're cozy. It doesn't look like anybody's having a bad dream. They're looking pretty content. However, one of our animals is not looking as content, is he? And so when we look up at our dog on the top picture, it's always fun to ask the students, well, how does he look like he feels? And so how do you think the dog up top might be feeling? Yeah, you're in my bed. He has his head, a lot of times some of my students will notice his head is tilted. He's kind of peering through, kind of, hey, what are you doing? So looking at all those 10 categories, when we are looking at absolutely everything. And so I'm going to challenge you guys, if you do get the STARE cards, they do actually have questions on the back of the cards, okay? But one of the other things that we might even look at is, imagine you're the boy lying in bed. Okay, so do this for me. So putting yourself, you're the boy in bed. Which hand is above the covers? His right hand or his left hand? His left hand, yes. So as you're imagining you're the boy, and that, you all, is also working on the student seeing something from somebody else's point of view. So to be able to put yourself physically in a picture and then see what's to their right, to their left, behind them, and all those things. Now, you could even take this one so much further and even do a comparison of how the boys are similar, how they're different, and look at numerous items in there. So this is one of my favorite ones to start with and to play with the students. And then what I like to do is the next day, I might ask them, without looking at the picture, to either close their eyes or tell me what they remember seeing in the picture. And let them give me details about that. So that's a super fun one to start out with. I gave you all 4 different ones that are from STARE cards that you can take these and look and follow those 10 categories. I will post those 10 categories on the YouTube channel video, okay, under the discussion. So that should be up sometime tomorrow. And then we've got the other two. But if you get the stare game, they have over 100 cards in there. But you can really use numerous pictures. And now we're going to go to some of my favorite pictures. So we're going to move on down in your handouts to our presidents. And let's see. Or I'm going to move on up to my presidents. Here we go. Okay. So this is from one of my all-time favorite books, and this book is absolutely brilliant. And I've had the privilege of talking to Will Cleveland, who wrote the book, when I first got permission to use the pictures. And then this past year, it came out in color. So you've got a nice big picture up here in number 1. The book is called Yo Millard Fillmore, and you can get it from Amazon, and it's going to have the picture there. And then it's going to have a little informational paragraph of interesting things about the different presidents. But when we're doing this, we would do the exact same thing, y'all. We would actually look at the first picture and ask the student, what do they see? And there's a lot in this picture. So when you're looking at it, and I will say, now stop and think. Okay, write those words down, okay? Stop and think. Take a minute. Just stop and think and look at the picture. Tell me, what do you see? And this can be very interesting because I will have a student who will say, well, I see a ladder. And is there a ladder there? Absolutely. I may have another student say, well, I see the flag on top of the White House. And so you'll have students pull different things out of this picture as the thing that they see first. Okay? What do you think the main thing is they're wanting us to look at? The washing machine. Yeah. But please hear me. I'm never going to tell a student, no, it's not the ladder, okay? Because that's something very unusual to see in front of a washing machine, right? But then I'm going to ask, well, what size washing machine do you see? And the majority of the time, they really are going to say, that's a big one. And what tells us that that's a big one? And we're going to see what they can tell us on this. And looking at the ladder and then the White House and the size of the White House compared to the washing machine. And then I would ask, what do you see around the washing machine? And what do we see around our washing machine? Laundry. And there's a little bit of laundry or a lot of laundry? A lot. Okay, none of us really want to see that much laundry. And then I'll say to students, have you ever heard someone say, I have a ton of work to do? And they have to wash a ton. And wash a ton is going to remind us of George Washington. Now, what is absolutely brilliant about this book, and y'all, I mean, absolutely brilliant, and that is that what they did is when you turn the page, when we go to the next picture, okay, you actually see something from the first picture come into the second picture. Y'all, this is what is so key. If you are one of my families that you're over in a different country, and I know many of y'all are that are watching, it is not about learning the presidents of the United States. It's about visualizing these images and connecting these images. And they happen to have the names of the presidents of the United States. And so that's where, well, what came over from that first picture? Oh, the washing machine. Well, how's it different? Oh, we get to see inside of it. And then talk about the atoms. Well, what color are the atoms? How many atoms do you see? And the atoms remind us of John Adams. And then you're going to see that the atoms show up as we turn the page into the next picture. And with this, the atoms are now being cooked by the chef's son. And the chef's son is going to remind us of Thomas Jefferson. Now, you can easily see how with the atoms, you could take a minute and bridge that to science and just talk about what atoms are, right? That you can look at this picture and ask, well, how does the little boy feel? How do you think he feels in the picture? Yeah, he's smiling, he's happy. And then we go back to down to number 4, and what do you notice about our little boy? How does he look like he feels now? Shocked, scared? Yes. And then who is under the grill? The sun. And how is the sun feeling? Angry, mad, and it's going to be a mad sun for James Madison. And then we're going to come over, and the sun is going to come into the next picture, and in front of the sun, you're going to get to see the money rowing. And the money rowing even is you'll see a $5 bill, and that money row is going to remind us of James Monroe, our 5th president. And then the money is going to hit a dam, and that's going to remind us of John Quincy Adams. Now, then, when we look at the dam, it looks like they borrowed my giant playing cards, didn't they? And so coming over the dam are jacks. And the jacks are going to remind us of our 7th president, Andrew Jackson. And then we're going to look and find that our jacks have made their way onto the wheels of a van. And the van is going to have a bureau on top of it. You know, we don't usually say bureau. Can talk about that's the French word for a dresser, a chest of drawer, but that's going to be for Martin Van Buren, our 8th president. And he just happened to be the first president born in the United States of America. Think about that. Okay? As you're thinking. And then our 9th president, William Henry Harrison. And you see the hairy van. And I have to share this story with you all. We went through those very quickly, but I wanted you to see when we're doing it with a student, we could take a couple 30 seconds on a picture, or we could take 30 minutes on a picture, so to speak. But then once they learn them, I always love them to learn, number 1, George Washington, 2, John Adams, 3, Thomas Jefferson. Because the students end up learning the presidents forwards and backwards. So that then they really do say 45, Donald J. Trump, 44, Barack Obama, 43, George W. Bush, 42, Bill Clinton. Okay, and they can do it forwards and backwards. Or we have had students who can say number 1, George Washington, number 45, Donald J. Trump, number 2, John Adams, 44, Barack Obama, and go forward, back, forward, back. I've got students who can skip count the presidents and say 2, John Adams, 4, James Madison, 6, John Quincy Adams, 8, Martin Van Buren. So there are some kids that will learn a song to the president, but they just kind of know the song. We're going so much deeper here. Can you see that? That they really, if you say, so, what picture do you see in your mind for William McKinley? They're going to say, oh, I see the sheep at McDonald's with the 25 billion because he's the 25th president. And then who do you see as president before McKinley? And they'll be, 24, Grover Cleveland, and describe the image that they see. And I was teaching this class and at a workshop, and one time a man burst out at this point in the class and he said, "That's it." And y'all, I didn't know if he was saying, "That's it, I'm tired of your silly games," or what he was saying. And he looked at me and he said, "That's it. That's what I can't do anymore." Because he had been in a car accident. And before that time, he had been an avid reader. And basically, everyone had told him that you're just losing your memory, you're getting older, it's the results of the car accident, it's your brain had time to heal, this is as good as it's going to get, basically. And no one had he had never been able to identify till that moment in time that that's what was happening. He just thought, I can't remember. You know what I'm saying? Not, I can't picture, I can't make images in my mind. And so he started doing this. I had a student that it took 4 weeks, and she called me at 6:30 one evening. She had gotten very discouraged because being able to see these images was very hard. She has hydrocephalus. She was 26 years old at the time, but she could read anything, but she just couldn't remember what she was reading. That was so challenging for her. And so she calls me at 6:30 and she said, "I'm sitting here at work and I see a hairy van in my mind. Is that what you wanted to happen to me? I can't get it out of my mind, and I see the van with the cars." And she started, because finally it happened. And the next thing we knew, she was able to pick up books and read. And then she started going to church. We got to be at her baptism. She was able to finally read Scripture and understand it, and start then to make sense of it. Because as we'll talk about, that ability to read it and to recall it, to make images and then to apply it is really where we're going when we're comprehending. Being able to comprehend also means that when we develop this comprehension, we see that totally bridged to their writing. So you can go back to your picture of our little boy and then write some sentences about it. Or any picture. Think about who your children are. You can take artwork, numerous pictures that they're interested in, and then talk about it and then start bridging it. In the Equipping Minds book, I actually also bridge those to the parts of speech, that what or who is going to be your noun, right? Your quantities and qualities will be your adjectives. Your actions will be your verbs, right? And so I do a whole bridging of how this then will generalize to their writing as well, and their language. Now, that they were supposed to be trying to see an image, because imagine if you said to your husband, to your parents, to whoever, and they said, "Well, what do you want for your birthday?" And you said, "Oh, I was over at the jewelry store, and there was this amazing Zulu over in the window, and if you could just get that for me, that would make my day." And they're like, "Zulu? What's a Zulu? I don't have a picture for that," right? And we know, I think when you're talking to your children or talking to people, that a lot of times nowadays there are many words that we may not always have the same understanding or we can't make a movie of it, and so we don't get the right thing at the grocery store. Or maybe we just say, go get that thing off the table. And we're not using specific descriptions. So what's super fun with this is how you're going to start seeing that develop. The other thing, and we're going to spend more time on comprehension next week as well, because I want you to see all the pieces to this, because it's probably one of the most complex things that we do. Because you're also going to see that the ability to comprehend impacts that ability to follow directions when you're hearing language. And that's why I don't ever forget, I see you, or hey, get a picture of this. Can you picture this? It's amazing if the difference. So, and do this, everybody do this for me this week. You've just read something to your class, to your student, you're doing bedtime at home, and instead of saying, well, what did you think about that? Say, oh, well, what did you picture? What did you see happening? And that question is so much, more freeing, and you'll get so much more information. When they get back from an activity, or even Sunday school or co-op or school, what would I have seen you doing at recess? What would I have seen you doing in class? What would I have seen? What would I have seen? And some parents will say, and so I'm giving you the caution tonight. Some parents said, you didn't tell me I was going to be sitting there for 30 minutes listening to them talk about their day. Before, they would just say, well, I don't know, nothing. And so you're going to get so much more information if you're asking the questions based on those 10 categories. So just know that you have been warned on that one. And so that's a great thing. But then this is also going to impact their ability to do abstract thinking, to get humor, their verbal expression, their problem solving, so many areas that we're going to be able to look at, which are so fun as we see this. But it's still going to go back. Don't stop doing your blink cards. I will share this one last story today, and please do this with your cards for me this week. I had a student that it was so much of a struggle to describe a card. And I was pulling out, she's nonverbal autistic, and I had to pull out. And then I did this one day. I said, so tell me, what do you see? And she said, 4 red triangles. And then I said, what do you see? Oh, 3 green triangles, 4 yellow stars. And we did the entire deck. And then that day, I picked up the card, and I said, oh, what do you see? And she said, the little boy wearing red pajamas, and started stringing descriptions together. And I went to another picture, the big pink pig, yellow corn, and I'm flipping pictures. And she's like, oh, the black penguin, and she's giving descriptions, and all of a sudden it hit me. 4 yellow stars, 3 green triangles. We had been trying to pull out things in isolation, but her brain needed the pattern, and that's why people will say, well, why do you say 3 green triangles, number, color, shape? Because that's how we talk. And that's how your students will start writing. So, the 3 brown bears ran in the woods. The 3 black dogs ran after the 2 white cats. And so, but take these cards and just have them either with a deck of cards. They can still do, 10 red hearts, any of the cards, set, blink, and say all 3 qualities on the cards for me this week. Okay? And remember, you can always model and take turns with your student. Okay, so we will go deeper and deeper into comprehension because, as you all know, I'm just going to say this. There is nothing content-wise that is life or death when you're reading, okay, so to speak. But do we all have to be able to remember what we read and remember what's being said to us? We do. At any age, in any job, at any point in our academics, in our life. And so building these images, we'll get to do more and more, but I wanted to go over Aristotle's 10 categories tonight with you. So look those up if you want to as well. And everybody have a fabulous week. I'm so proud of everybody with keeping up your exercises, and I'll see you next week.